Daniel Story, Chapter 5, Part 2. Father knew that we could all be deported or shot if they discovered the radio, but he also knew that hope was as important as bread, perhaps more important. It gave us some dignity knowing that in this small way we were breaking the rules and defying them. Father also had a small diary thrown in as part of the deal for the noodles. He gave it to me. I wrote in it when I could, as a supplement to my pictures. As a further record I hoped would survive the war. We counted ourselves fortunate. We had our own apartment, only one room, which we shared with Opa Samuel and Oma Rachel. Mother had managed to get a job at a bakery and was able to bring home a loaf of bread every few days. A loaf had to last each person 7 days by then, and this extra bread gave us enough energy to carry on. Also, since we were all working, we managed to get enough ghetto money to buy vegetables and canned meat when they were available. Our rations were a vast improvement over those we were given while we were stuck in the school. We made sure that Auntie Leah and my cousins always had some to share as well. They also had a room in our apartment block. We were on the second floor, they were on the first. Because Mother was so frugal and clever at stretching our rations, none of us were yet suffering from the effects of starvation. Not that we weren't always hungry and often weak. We were. Father worked in a carpentry workshop. I worked at a metalworks factory in an apprenticeship program. And Erica worked at a sewing factory. Everyone worked. That's what the ghetto was for. Slave labor. Those who didn't work were deported out. Oma Rachel worked sorting feathers, and Opa Samuel, who had been a dentist before he retired, he was already 75, worked at the hospital. And then Oma Rachel got sick. Auntie Leah was sure it was a form of starvation. Oma's legs swelled up and she couldn't walk. She had terrible rashes on her skin that quickly got infected. She developed a fever. Opa Samuel realized that she'd been secretly giving away her food, to us. She'd add a slice of bread to the family stock, or her ration of vegetables would find its way into someone's soup bowl. That was Oma Rachel. Everyone came before her. She always fussed over us all and spoiled us. I remember the huge glass bowl of candy she'd kept in our house, and whenever we went to visit, we always were urged to eat as much as we could. And her husband a dentist! He used to scold her about it, but she never listened. How my mouth waters thinking of those soft toffees and those tart, hard lemon rocks. Auntie Leah and Opa Samuel used all the pool they had in the hospital and managed to get Oma a bed. This was a great triumph. It was almost impossible to get a bed in the hospital. She was given some vitamin injections, and everyone hoped she would be all right. And then one morning, as I was working in the shop, terrible news spread from one person to the next. There were gasps and cries, and people left their work and ran. I remember that, even though it was September, it was terribly hot. We'd been in the ghetto almost a year by then, and I'd seen terrible things, but I was unprepared for what happened next. "What is it?" I asked a small group that had gathered by the door. "They're evacuating the hospital." Oma. Oh no, all I could think of was to run, to get there, to try to save her. It didn't take a genius to realize that they weren't evacuating the hospital to take all these sick people to a work camp. There could be only one reason. They were too sick to work, and therefore they must die. I ran along the narrow, crooked streets with throngs of others, and when I neared the hospital, I saw that I was cut off. Hundreds of policemen and guards kept people well back from the hospital. It was a pitiful sight. Those who could walk were pushed out into the waiting trucks. Others were carried out in stretchers. I could see people trying to escape, some running, some jumping from the windows. Everywhere around me people screamed, called out to relatives, hoping at least to say goodbye, see them one last time, but we couldn't. We were too far away. And then, the worst. German soldiers threw babies, newborns, little children, out of the windows and into the trucks below. I could stand no more. I turned, weeping, and stumbled back to our apartment. And who was there? Oma Rachel, wearing a white gown and holding a surgical mask in her hand. She grinned at me. I had to think fast, Daniel. But I kept my head. I grabbed this and walked out as if I were a doctor. Soon the whole family was there, and despair turned to joy on each face as they walked in and saw Oma Rachel. But the next morning, before we had even gotten up, there was a terrible banging on the door. and when we opened it, a policeman stood there and demanded that Rachel Aronson go with him to the transport. No, Father objected. She is all better. It's true she was at the hospital, but she's fine now. That may be, the policeman answered, but it's no concern of mine. We have strict orders to take her. We are taking everyone who was listed at the hospital yesterday. Father begged and pleaded, but it did no good. And then Opa Samuel got his things together and hers and announced that they would go together. No, Father cried. Opa Samuel gave Father a big hug and kiss. We've been together all our lives. Should I let her go off alone now? So Father had to let them go. I felt so sad. I thought my heart would break. Of course, I'd felt terrible when little George died and Auntie Anna, but I hadn't known them well, hadn't grown up with them, hadn't loved them the way I loved Opa Samuel and Oma Rachel. I only hoped that Oma and Opa wouldn't be made to suffer too much. But if they were sent on a trip like the one I'm on now, that hope was in vain. Still, the worst was not yet over. Oh no, 2 days later the chairman of the ghetto made a terrible announcement. All children under 10 and all old people were to be sent away. Again, it was obvious that only those who could work for the Germans would be saved. But these deportations would also take people who were working but who looked weak or frail, those who obviously soon wouldn't be able to work. There were rumors that those who were deported were taken to a place called Chelmo, where they were killed. We had a family meeting in our apartment, Mother, Father, Auntie Leah, and myself. Erica looked after the children downstairs. They may well take Erica, Mother said. She's thin and pale and small for her age. Erica was actually very strong, but she didn't look it. Friedrich, too, Auntie Leah said. He's just like Erica, small and skinny and with that rash on his face. And what about Gertrude? She's only 10. And Bridget, she's 9. They'll certainly take them. Only Mia is tall and healthy looking. Tears came to Auntie Leah's eyes. She fought them back. I won't let them take my children, she said quietly. We can hide 2 in the cupboard, Father suggested. It'll be dangerous. Almost no air. If they're in there too long... Mother nodded. Dangerous. But maybe their only chance. The police will search the apartment. They'll have to be quiet. Not a word. So, Gertrude and Bridget, Father said. No, Auntie replied, much to my surprise. They're too young. They'll get scared. They'll cry out, and then they'll be caught. And so will Erica and Friedrich. It must be the older children. Only they have a chance.